We've just got some breaking news in from Buckingham Palace, folks. So this statement has just come in from Buckingham Palace and I'll read it for you. It goes on to say, His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and...
The Windsor State Dinner was designed to display unity, dignity, and royal control. Instead, before the final course had even been served, Queen Camilla rose from her place and publicly confronted Princess Catherine in front of foreign dignitaries, senior courtiers, and stunned members of the royal family. Catherine did not retreat. Her expression hardened. William froze beside her, and within seconds, a ceremonial evening became a royal battle. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine felt the room change before anyone dared to speak. Windsor Castle had hosted kings, presidents, and diplomats for generations. But this dinner carried weight, because every gesture was meant to prove that the monarchy remained steady under pressure. A state dinner, a formal banquet held for a foreign guest, was never supposed to expose private division. Yet the Queen had chosen that exact setting to accuse her of ignoring a seating and entrance instruction. Camilla placed her glass down with a controlled movement. She looked across the table and demanded to know why her authority had been disregarded when the senior royal women entered the hall. The words were calm, but the accusation was unmistakable. Catherine understood at once why it mattered. She was not being corrected in private. She was being challenged before government representatives, overseas guests, and courtiers whose loyalty would shape how the monarchy's future was judged. William tightened his hand beneath the table. The prince knew one wrong sentence could turn embarrassment into open conflict, yet he also saw the anger building in his wife. Catherine moved her hand toward his wrist, stopping him before he intervened. She would not allow anyone to say she had hidden behind the future king. Her humiliation was real, but so was her control. Charles lowered his eyes as silence spread around him. The king knew the Lord Chamberlain's office, the palace department responsible for official ceremonies and royal protocol, had approved the final instructions hours earlier. Catherine then answered with measured force. She had followed the written order delivered to her household, and that order had been changed shortly before the dinner began. Camilla's expression shifted. For the first time, certainty gave way to doubt. Catherine reached into her evening bag, unfolded the approved instruction card, and placed it beside her plate. Then, she asked the question no one in the room could escape. Who had changed the order after it was approved? That question did more than defend Catherine. It forced every person in the room to confront the private rivalry that had been growing behind palace doors for months. To the guests seated beneath Windsor's glittering chandeliers, the confrontation seemed sudden. But between Catherine and Camilla, nothing about it was sudden. One woman had spent years protecting the position she fought to earn. The other had become the living symbol of the monarchy's future. Their smiles had remained polite, their conversations measured. Yet beneath every formal appearance lay an unspoken fear that only one of them could define the royal family's next chapter. Catherine left the dining room with her composure still intact. But the moment the side chamber door closed, her hands began to tremble. The Princess of Wales, the title given to the wife of the heir to the throne, carried more than ceremonial importance. Her growing connection with the public had made her a symbol of stability, and any accusation against her judgment could damage the trust she had spent years building. Tonight, that trust had been challenged in front of people whose opinions carried diplomatic weight. William followed moments later and closed the door behind him. He told her the confrontation had crossed a line because Camilla had not merely questioned an entrance order. She had questioned Catherine's honesty. The prince watched his wife struggle between fury and sadness, knowing she had repeatedly tried to create peace inside the family. She had offered respect, shared duties, and avoided public competition. Yet each effort now seemed to have been judged as hidden ambition. Camilla returned to her private sitting room and removed one bracelet with unsteady fingers. According to a documented account later prepared by a senior household aide, she admitted that Catherine's growing influence had begun to make her feel invisible. The Queen had endured years of public hostility before gaining acceptance, and that painful history had made her fiercely protective of the authority she finally possessed. She did not see a simple mistake. She saw the beginning of replacement. Charles remained caught between them. The king had convinced himself that refusing to choose sides would protect the family, but his silence had done the opposite. Every ignored disagreement had allowed suspicion to harden. Every delayed conversation had made the next confrontation more dangerous. William asked Catherine whether she wanted him to confront his father before the night ended. She refused. She would not be portrayed as a woman who needed the future king to fight her battles. Her anger had become resolve, and her sadness had become something colder. The argument had never truly been about who entered first. The altered instruction had exposed a deeper struggle over who possessed the power to shape future royal occasions. And the origin of that struggle could be traced to one private ceremony weeks earlier, the moment Camilla first believed Catherine had deliberately stepped into her place. The confrontation at Windsor began long before the first guest entered the state dining room. Its true beginning came during a private investiture rehearsal 6 weeks earlier, when a last-minute decision placed Catherine beside the king, while Camilla was directed to stand several steps behind. No cameras captured the exchange that followed, but those present remembered the Queen's expression, Catherine's stunned silence, and the sentence that transformed unease into open suspicion. Catherine had arrived expecting a routine rehearsal. The investiture, a formal ceremony where the monarch honors people for public service, included a youth service award she had been asked to present beside Charles. Palace planners moved her floor marker closer to him so the presentation could proceed without delay. That change mattered because standing positions inside royal ceremonies signal authority, trust, and closeness to the sovereign. Even a small adjustment could be interpreted as a public message about who held influence. Camilla entered moments later and stopped when she saw the revised arrangement. She studied the markings, looked directly at Catherine, and said, "You appear to be standing where I was told I would stand." The Queen kept her voice controlled, but the embarrassment beneath it was clear. She had expected to remain beside her husband, and had received no warning that the plan had changed. Catherine answered immediately that she had not requested the new position. She even offered to move, hoping to prevent the moment from becoming personal. The ceremony secretary refused, explaining that the rehearsal was already behind schedule and that the revised plan had been approved. Camilla heard only one message. Palace officials were beginning to place the future queen ahead of the present one. Catherine left the rehearsal deeply unsettled. In a recorded private conversation, later preserved in a household account, she told William that every duty she accepted now risked being treated as an attempt to replace his stepmother. The prince tried to reassure her, but he understood why the moment mattered. If routine service became a contest for status, the family could no longer work without suspicion. Charles learned about the exchange that evening. The king told an advisor that the tension would disappear if nobody gave it importance. His silence felt practical, yet it allowed the wound to remain open. Weeks later, the same deputy protocol officer handled the Windsor dinner instructions. A copied memorandum showed that Catherine's household received the final approved order, while Camilla's team kept an earlier version. Someone noticed both documents remained active and chose not to correct them. By the time Catherine and Camilla faced each other again across the state table, the mistake was no longer accidental. It had become a trap waiting for one of them to react. Silence settled over the state dinner with crushing force. Camilla expected Catherine to apologize, lower her gaze, and allow the evening to continue. Instead, the Princess of Wales straightened in her chair and answered with a calmness more dangerous than anger. She would not accept blame for an instruction she had never changed. And as the future queen spoke, The entire room realized that years of careful restraint had reached their breaking point. Catherine looked directly across the table and stated that she had followed the final authorized order delivered to her household that afternoon. The protocol office, the palace department responsible for controlling formal seating, entrances, and ceremonial rank, had approved every detail. That mattered because disobeying such an order could be treated as disrespect, while following it should have protected her from blame. Instead, the same document had become a weapon against her. Camilla answered sharply that no member of the family should require a written instruction to recognize seniority at a state occasion. The Queen pushed her chair back slightly and accused Catherine's team of behaving as though the future had already arrived. Her words exposed the deeper fear beneath the argument. This was no longer about one entrance. It was about whether the present monarch's household was already losing control to the next generation. Catherine felt the anger rise, but she refused to let it control her voice. She replied that respect must work both ways, and that public humiliation was not a proper form of royal discipline. William began to speak, his expression hardening as he watched his wife being challenged. She stopped the prince with one glance. If he defended her now, critics could claim she lacked the strength to answer for herself. Charles finally asked both women to end the exchange. The king tried to sound firm, but hesitation weakened every word. He feared confronting his wife, yet he also knew his daughter-in-law had been placed in an impossible position. His silence had protected no one, and now the damage was unfolding before foreign guests. Catherine reached into her evening bag and placed the folded instruction card beside her plate. A senior courtier examined the approval mark and quietly confirmed that it differed from the version held by Camilla's household. The Queen's certainty broke for one brief second. She realized the woman opposite her may have been trapped by the same confusion. Catherine refused to apologize for following an authorized order, but she expressed regret that the dispute had unfolded before their guests. She preserved dignity without surrendering the truth. The confrontation ended at the table, but the discovery of two conflicting orders shifted the battle toward the hidden offices, where royal power was quietly exercised. Before midnight, the argument was no longer being treated as a family disagreement. Two official instructions had circulated under royal authority, each placing a different woman in the position of honor. That meant someone inside the palace had either made an extraordinary mistake or engineered a collision between the Queen and the future Queen. As doors closed and telephones began ringing, Charles faced the truth he had avoided all evening. Control of his household was slipping. Charles sat alone in a private Windsor study with both versions of the order spread before him. The Lord Chamberlain's office, the royal department that manages seating, timing, precedence, and formal movement at major ceremonies, had stamped each document through different channels. That mattered because contradictory orders did not simply embarrass two women. They exposed confusion inside the sovereign's household and suggested that staff loyalty had begun to outweigh clear command. The king read the first page, then the second, before removing his glasses and placing them silently on the desk. Betrayal mixed with shame. He had avoided choosing sides because he believed silence would protect peace. Yet that silence had given rival household teams room to act, without firm supervision. What began as caution had become weakness, and everyone around him could now see it. William entered without waiting for ceremony. The prince told his father that Catherine had been challenged in public because nobody had taken responsibility for the earlier disputes. He did not raise his voice, but each word landed heavily. The future king made clear that his wife had been forced to defend her integrity before foreign guests because the palace had failed to control its own instructions. Charles then opened a documented internal briefing prepared by the protocol secretary. It revealed that the newer order came from a revision requested after he expressed concern that Catherine should stand closer to visiting younger dignitaries. The monarch had wanted the evening to reflect continuity. Instead, his adjustment had been turned into a symbol of replacement. A household assistant attached to Camilla had received the revision, but deliberately left the earlier version active. According to the recorded staff account, the aide believed the change weakened the Queen's precedence and hoped the original arrangement would still be followed. Camilla had not created the conflicting document, but the defensiveness inside her office had transformed a procedural change into quiet resistance. Charles ordered an immediate internal review and removed the assistant from ceremonial duties. William did not look satisfied. He warned that punishing one employee would not solve the deeper problem unless his father clearly defined where Camilla's authority ended and Catherine's future role began. By morning, the palace had identified the procedural failure, but the emotional damage was already moving through the family faster than any official review could contain it. Morning brought no relief. The state guests had departed, the silver had been cleared, and Windsor's formal rooms had returned to silence. Yet inside the private apartments, every member of the family understood that something permanent had changed. Catherine had defended herself, Camilla had lost control of the moment, and Charles had failed to protect either woman from public embarrassment. Now each of them had to face what remained after the anger faded. Catherine sat across from William with untouched tea cooling beside her. She admitted that the accusation itself was not what hurt most. The real wound came from the decision to challenge her before foreign guests, because that choice suggested the humiliation had been deliberate. The prince felt protective and furious, but she asked him not to turn the dispute into a war between father and son. Such a split would matter beyond the family, because the monarchy depended on showing that the present king and the future one could still act with unity. Camilla received the suspension notice before her morning briefing began. The review, a formal palace investigation into staff conduct and decision-making, meant the failure would now be attached directly to her private office. She closed the folder, dismissed the waiting aides, and remained alone after the door shut. The Queen understood that one employee's action would not shield her from judgment. Her household had become defensive because it had absorbed her fear. Charles entered later and did not soften his message. He told his wife that confronting Catherine before diplomats and senior officials had been unacceptable, even if she believed her position had been ignored. The king knew why the moment mattered. A private disagreement could be repaired quietly, but a public clash invited the world to question whether his household remained under control. Camilla answered with sadness rather than anger. In a recorded private conversation preserved by a senior aide, she admitted that she feared becoming ceremonial background while public attention moved toward William and Catherine. She had fought for acceptance for years, only to feel that the future was arriving before she had finished proving herself in the present. Catherine then cancelled a scheduled planning session with the Queen. Palace aides rearranged the week's engagements, hoping distance would prevent another confrontation. Charles recognized the danger immediately. Keeping the two women apart might reduce tension, but it would also confirm every rumor of a divided monarchy. Catherine refused to let silence harden into permanent damage. She wrote a brief message by hand and sent it directly to Camilla, asking for a private meeting without husbands, aides, or protocol officials. The next decision would belong to Camilla alone: reject the message and deepen the fracture, or enter a room where neither woman could hide behind rank. No courtiers waited outside with briefing folders. No husbands sat nearby to defend, explain, or interrupt. Catherine and Camilla entered the small Windsor drawing room alone, carrying years of public expectation and private resentment between them. For the first time, the Queen and the future Queen were not speaking through protocol. They were two women confronting the fear that had poisoned their relationship and deciding whether the monarchy could survive their silence. Catherine arrived first and stood beside the unlit fireplace. She deliberately avoided the chair traditionally reserved for the senior royal. Precedence. The formal order that determines who stands, enters, or sits first had already caused enough damage. Her choice mattered because it removed the very symbol that had divided them. She was not there to win another place. She was there to end the struggle over it. Camilla entered cautiously and closed the door herself. She noticed the empty chair, then looked at Catherine with a guarded expression. The Queen understood the gesture immediately. No aides could twist their words now, and no household could turn a private fear into an official instruction. For the first time, each woman had to answer directly for what she had done. Catherine spoke without raising her voice. She said the confrontation had made her feel accused of disloyalty before people whose respect she was required to maintain. Her role demanded trust from diplomats, staff, and the public, and one public accusation could damage years of careful service. She did not hide her anger, but beneath it sat a deeper wound. She had tried to show respect and had been treated as a threat. Camilla admitted that fear had shaped her reaction. According to a documented private account prepared after the meeting, she said repeated ceremonial changes made her believe the palace was reducing her importance before Charles's reign had even ended. Acceptance had never erased her fear of being judged temporary, unwanted, or replaceable. The monarch had gained status, yet she still carried the insecurity of someone expecting it to be taken away. Catherine answered that she did not want Camilla's marriage, position, or authority. She wanted room to prepare for duties she could not avoid forever. The future was not an attack. It was a responsibility already moving toward her. Camilla removed the state dinner instruction card from her handbag, tore it once, and placed the pieces on the table. Catherine did not offer instant forgiveness, but she agreed the rivalry had to end before it damaged William, Charles, and the crown itself. Camilla promised a direct apology. Catherine promised that future concerns would be discussed face to face. The Queen then opened the door and allowed her to leave first, not as surrender, but as acknowledgement. Their private agreement remained hidden for only a few hours, because outside Windsor, the public had already begun transforming one painful dinner into a national verdict on the monarchy. By midday, the confrontation had escaped the castle. Britain did not hear every word spoken across the state table, but one captured moment told the story. Catherine, sitting rigidly beside William, while Camilla leaned forward with one hand pressed against the table. The image appeared everywhere. To some, it showed a queen defending her authority. To others, it showed the monarchy's future refusing to be publicly diminished. One newspaper placed the image across its front page, beneath the headline, "War at Windsor." The photograph froze the exact second when private resentment became public judgment. A morning broadcaster described the incident as the clearest sign yet of tension between the present royal household and the generation preparing to succeed it. The royal household, meaning the staff and offices serving senior members of the family, now looked divided before the entire country. A small crowd gathered outside Windsor Castle before noon. One woman held flowers for Catherine and said the future queen had shown courage by remaining calm. Another insisted Camilla deserved respect because her rank could not be ignored without consequence. Their disagreement reflected the deeper national debate. The public was no longer discussing a seating error. People were deciding which woman represented dignity, authority, and the monarchy's future. William watched the coverage without speaking. The prince felt furious that his wife's humiliation had become entertainment, yet Catherine refused to issue a defensive statement. She believed another public response would destroy the fragile understanding reached behind the closed door. Silence now required greater strength than retaliation. Charles authorized a carefully worded palace announcement confirming that a ceremonial instruction error had occurred. The statement added that senior members of the family remained committed to unified service. Ceremonial instructions, the official directions controlling seating, entrances, and rank at royal events, would now receive greater oversight. That admission mattered because the palace rarely acknowledged internal mistakes so directly. Camilla then approved one personal sentence. According to the recorded communications briefing, she accepted that her concerns should have been raised privately rather than during the dinner. Commentators recognized the words for what they were: an apology without another public humiliation. Slowly, the tone began to shift from conflict toward repair. Charles also approved a new rule requiring major ceremonial revisions to be confirmed by both his household and William's team. The king understood that trust needed structure, not promises alone. Then came the announcement that changed everything. Catherine and Camilla would attend their next scheduled engagement together. The world had delivered its judgment, but the final verdict would come when the two women stepped forward together and showed whether their private agreement could survive public scrutiny. 3 days after the Windsor confrontation, Catherine and Camilla appeared together at a royal reception that neither woman chose to cancel. There was no dramatic embrace, and no attempt to pretend the state dinner had never happened. Instead, the Queen paused before entering, turned toward the Princess of Wales, and invited her to walk beside her. It was a small gesture, but within the monarchy, small gestures often carry the weight of history. Camilla waited at the entrance rather than moving ahead. She allowed Catherine to reach her side, and for one quiet second, neither woman spoke. The reception, a formal royal gathering held to welcome guests and support public service, mattered because their entrance would be studied as proof of either division or repair. Catherine felt cautious, but she also understood that accepting the gesture showed strength without revenge. She would not erase the insult, yet she would not let it control the future. Camilla spoke privately before the doors opened. According to a documented account prepared by a senior aide after the reception, she apologized again and admitted that fear had caused her to mistake preparation for succession as a personal attack. The Queen confessed that every ceremonial change had felt like a warning that her place was fading. She had defended her authority so fiercely that she had wounded the very person expected to protect the crown after her. Catherine answered with calm honesty. She said the monarchy could not demand loyalty from the public while members of its own family used rank to injure one another. Her anger had not disappeared, but it had become a clear boundary. Respect could not flow in only one direction, and authority could never excuse humiliation. William watched their entrance with visible relief. The prince understood that his wife had chosen dignity without surrendering her truth. Charles felt something deeper. The king recognized that the two women had repaired a division he had been too afraid to confront himself. The consequences were immediate and lasting. The suspended protocol assistant was reassigned. Ceremonial authority was clearly defined, and direct communication between both royal households became mandatory. Camilla kept her full dignity as queen, while Catherine's place in the monarchy's future was finally acknowledged rather than treated as a threat. Neither woman defeated the other. Both rejected the fear, silence, and insecurity that had turned confusion into humiliation. Camilla's apology preserved her authority because it proved that real strength can admit failure. Catherine's fury protected her dignity because it showed that loyalty does not require submission. The Windsor State Dinner began as a struggle over who should walk first, but it ended by teaching the monarchy something far more important. The crown survives not when one woman stands above another, but when both choose duty, honesty, and dignity over fear. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.